So there's different kinds of medical histories. We just talked about that. There's comprehensive health histories. There's focused, problem-oriented histories. So in the ER, they don't mince words like boom, 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 kind of rapid fire. Me, I've got to be, I'm a family doc, so how do you feel about that? You know, we just kind of get in this sort of touchy-feely kind of stuff. So there's just different ways to take histories. And then there's different ways to listen. There's active listening, empathetic responses, there's guided questions, nonverbal communication, and then you want to sort of validate for them. And I talked to you guys about my sort of pretend like I'm a stalker and I just look at one eye and don't blink until they blink kind of stuff. So there's just active listening. People like you if they're talking, that you look at them. So this is why I like Scribes, is because, and that's what the part of paper we published, that I spend most, when you're with a family, when you're with a doctor who doesn't have a scribe, they're looking, at their keyboard and trying to listen, and, kind of lean over. They're trying to do the best they can, but you'll talk to most of the docs, it's a struggle. So you have your question like, do I look at the patient and then stay up all night doing my notes, or do I get it done and maybe have a less than optimal encounter? And they sort of end up, sort of trading it back and forth. So to me, as a physician, there is a book called, it's called The Attending, Be Attentive. Like, when you're there, be there. And it turns out, if you are looking at the patient and doing a lot of these, we call it behavioral science type things, people feel like you're there longer. Like I'm always sitting down when I talk to a patient, because if you're standing, it could be the same amount of time, and they've done research that shows that. And a lot of the docs in the ER get dinged because patients are in the gurney and they're standing, and then the patient is thinking like he was hardly here for any time at all. And this one guy was getting really low rates, although he's an amazing clinician, until he's so smart he figured out, because there's a lot of times there's no chair, but there's always a biohazard trash can. And so he was the trash can doc. He would always bring up the trash can and sit down. And he would just, and then this other guy I had, this is the other ploy you do, he's from like Montana, and they just talk slow. Nothing against Montana, it's a beautiful there. But if you talk slow, it just feels like a long time. So you can do all these little tricks so that patients think you're there for a long time, you're listening, and then you connect with the person's state. And so you'll hear them just echo, not so much what they say, but how they're feeling. Like they rant and rave, and you go, boy, that sounds like you're frustrated. And then it gives them a chance to do that again. So, and you really want to use both verbal and nonverbal skills. That being said, you as a scribe don't want to take away from that. So you need to be professional. I'll be frank, you should not like snap your gum during the whole interview and stuff. You should try to be professional. I'm real big on badges. I love badges. You guys should always have your badge on. It's just, you can go anywhere with the right badge. And so I have a whole pocket full of badges, and you just wear them and go places. But for you, I think you should be professional. You should probably have scrubs on. You should have a badge, even if it's like this kind of a badge. And then just be very polite. Again, you're not supposed to diagnose or do anything, but you can shake hands if you want to. Essentially, you're kind of like a court reporter. But you can actually add to it. Sometimes they might say something, like, sounds like she's pretty happy about, something just happened. She won a $100 million lottery ticket. Yeah. And you can say, yeah, that does sound like her. I guess to some people that's a lot of money. That's what I tell all the people. Because like, LaDainian got $40 million. And so just to irritate him, I go, because what do you say if someone's got $40 million? That's more than all of us have right now, that I know of. But, everyone's like, sort of kissing his butt about it and stuff. I go, I just want to irritate him because I like LaDainian. And I go, gosh, LaDainian, I guess to some people that's a lot of money. Congratulations. What are you talking about? You're a jerk. I go, well, if you were Oprah, you'd probably commit suicide if you only had $40 million. And Bill Gates, that's like in his couch. But to you, you enjoy that $40 million. So anyway, it's just fun to play around. But it all has to do with your different kinds of skills. So I know exactly how you feel. It's like, oh, this isn't work. Did I get out? I might get out.
Are you using the picture?
Oh, maybe I can try. But that's not good. So, talk amongst yourself. Get to know me.
Especially like if you have like you're on a time crunch, I feel like I should do like weekend trips. Start that. Yeah. You know, some other big
As it gets us up, we'll keep going because I want to get you guys on time. So the first part is active listening, where you're participating and you're giving them feedback as to what they're doing. And the goal is to try to keep it as open as you can to try to get as much information from them. And a lot of people, unless they feel that you care, they don't necessarily want to open up and really, they tell us stuff that they wouldn't tell their rabbi or their priest. They just don't tell anyone else. And I literally have to go to my grave with some of these stories. The big deal, though, is that you want to get them so they feel confidence in you. And then there's the empathetic response, where you can kind of, like I said, you feel like you're frustrated. You give them a little bit of feedback to give them then permission to tell you more. A guided question's a little bit, so you have open-ended question, how may I help you, what brings you here today, as opposed to, I heard that you're having a sore throat, and then you kind of tell them what you know. And so there's different ways, open-ended versus focused. And then a lot of times, like say for example with a knee, there's some basic questions I gotta ask. So number one, was it traumatic or non-traumatic? Was it just happen? And I kind of use this like, use things like, was it kind of gradual, it kept getting worse, or was it like one thing that happened? And so you just try to give them cues to tell you, is it traumatic or non-traumatic? And then, tell me like how it happened, and then tell me, so this happened 4 days ago. What's happened over the last 4 days? Is it getting worse? See, I just assume everything's worse. So I said, is it about the same, or is it getting worse? Because if it gets better, they'll tell me. But if you say it's getting better, no, it's a lot worse, and they just egg on. So I've just found, I just assume I'm not a good doctor. It's either the same or it's worse. And then after that, it's like, okay, on a scale of 0 to 10, where 0 is no pain and 10 is like the worst pain you've ever had, like having a baby or get a car crash. I've never had a baby, but I heard it's really painful. What are you at rest? And then what are you when you do something? They might say for a back, I'm a 3 out of 10, when I'm resting, but when I stand up, it gets to like a 10 out of 10. And then we have what we call symptom maximizers and symptom minimizers. So you might have heard of people that are called malingerers. Malingerers is kind of a derogatory term, meaning that the person's sort of faking it. So I never use that term. I only use the term symptom minimizer or maximizer. So I have these, stoic guys from Montana that talk really slow, but they're like, does it hurt? No, and it's like just dangling. It's like, so they're a symptom minimizer. They're not going to tell you it hurts. The Chargers are that way. Like they don't want to come out of the game, so they're just symptom minimizers. On the other hand, I have what I call symptom maximizers, and that's what you can talk about. Malingerer people. It's just like they have a hangnail, and it's like a 10 out of 10. It's the worst pain. I need the ICU. I need morphine and Valium, and I'm allergic to everything except for those medicines that start with a P and end in a set, Percocet. And is you the doctor going to be my doctor today? Because I need a lot of those, and I have a high pain tolerance. You just have a fun time with them because they know medicine's way more. You learn so much from your addicts and stuff because they know the medicine more than anything. So to me, I always like to go like, what kind of person are they? A symptom minimizer or maximizer, and you kind of play off of that. And then we'll ask them, like in their knee, did it swell? Does it give out? Does it feel weak? Can you walk without a limp? Then how have you treated it? What kind of brace? What kind of medicines? What kind of ointments? Anything else you might have done? And if it's been a while, like, okay, what have you had done previous? You ever heard it before? Have you had any surgeries on it? So you're just going to give them some very specific questions because you need to get all these answered because we basically have an algorithm to figure out sort of what they have. And they say with a good history, you can get about 90+% of the diagnosis. And I would agree with that. So that's where telemedicine is quite good because you can do a lot of it from there. The physical exam will validate it, and you can do end providers, but a lot of you will be doing telehealth, and you'll see that that's going to be very important to be able to, like with a Skype, see them, ask them questions, kind of validate. So there's different kinds of questions you'll see. And then for me, we have a, sorry, I broke it, sorry, is the nonverbal cues. So, you know, if I have somebody who's talking to me like this, and they're just moving like this, and, you know, you just know that they don't trust you, they don't want to be here, their wife made them come in. So there's gynecologists, and I'm what's considered a guyologist. I take care of guys who don't want to take care of themselves. I'm only here, she want me to come in, and, you know, that's just the way they are. Or if you talk to them and they're looking all over, you know, it's just, you know that they're bored or they don't want to be here, that sort of thing. So I'm always looking, and if you get a chance, I highly recommend reading Sherlock Holmes's series, not all the movies and stuff, but actually the real book. Because anybody know who wrote Sherlock Holmes? Sir Conrad Doyle. Dr. Conrad Doyle. It was written by a doctor. And the whole deal was he used deductive reasoning to come up with all the Sherlock Holmes stuff. So it's actually quite good. You get very good at observation for people and coming up with stuff. So I like that idea. So you almost want to play the game, like, okay, who are they? What do they have? So even before I talk to them, I know a lot about them. I love going to the mall. I look like that strange person, like, oh, you've had this and you have that. So, and then you look at the scars. You know, like if you have a serpiginous scar, so you don't say a curved scar, that's one syllable. Serpiginous, like a serpentine, serpiginous scar. And so if they have a serpiginous scar, they usually had a distal biceps rupture of their biceps tendon. And the bicep has how many heads? 2, it's called bicep. So it's attached down here, it comes up here, it has 2 heads to the bicep. Tricep obviously is 3, so that's kind of how you get that. So it's kind of nice when you start to see some of that, you can start to know about how they dress, their mannerisms, any scars that they have, and then sort of how they interact, because you can come up with those sorts of ideas from their verbal cues. Sometimes people are, again, symptom maximizers, and we'll do different provocative tests to show that they're symptom maximizers. So like, for example, if Logan had low back pain and I pushed on his coiffed hair, if I pushed on it and it hurts, I know he's a symptom maximizer, because that does not hurt low back pain. But the patient doesn't know that. So we'll do a lot of tests like that. Or they'll say, you know, like if you're laying down, so laying flat, and you lift your leg up, it's called a straight leg raise, obviously, and they would say that that hurts them. But if I sit them down and just say, I'm going to look at your knee, and I open up their knee, it's the same thing, but if that doesn't hurt them, then I know that they're symptom maximizing the straight leg raise. So you'll see us do all these little provocative tests, especially when people are symptom minimizers trying to sort of game the system and stuff. But I really look at their eye contact. Like if you're depressed, they're just looking down. So like if I have someone who might be suicidal, I like to document good eye contact, because that means they're probably a little with it. But if someone doesn't want to look at you, that kind of tells you something. And then do they have any tremor, any resting tremor? So all these things you kind of want to look at. And we'll have some people that they'll come in and you'll say, so how's your right arm? Fine. Can you move it? Yeah. And they're like, we're not moving it. Because they've had a stroke and they don't even know they're not moving it. So there's just a lot of interesting things you'll find. And then the other is validation in the history testing. So, and I call it echotherapy. So it's like, they come in, they're very angry, you lost this, something happened, and they're very, very upset. And I would validate that. So it sounds like, you were kind of given a raw deal on that. Yeah, and then they kind of go on and on and on. So depending on, the situation, you may see your examiner doing that. And then you want to document that, but again, in a very non-sort of judgmental way. And so a lot of times you might even write the phrase, patient states, not that it's true, but patient states it's this. Sometimes your provider will get a little upset if you say it's a car accident, they were in a car accident, because accident is a judgmental thing, like especially, so we always say car crash. So don't get upset if you get reprimanded for different verbiage, because you may not think, car accident, we say, I was in a car accident. Well, it actually means it was no one's fault. When, if it goes to medical legal or just civil or whatever, so you just say what it was. It was a crash, and then that sort of thing. So just to understand that we get very skilled at that. So in general, there's reassurance. We do partnering with the patient. We'll do summarization. This is on page 12. And then there's some transitions, like, okay, we've done this, let's go on to this. Because I may have people who have what I call a positive review system, like everything hurts. And I got 10 minutes, and we have to get through a whole thing. So I'll say, okay, that's good, let's go to this. And then, so I need to transition so that they know I'm doing the right thing, but I've got to be a little bit brisk about it. And then I like to empower the patient to try to make them feel like it's not their fault, that what they're coming in for is a reasonable thing, and they're doing okay. So we like to really get the patient so it's a good interaction. So there is this sort of transference of emotion, and I think the good physicians and providers kind of have good energy. Like, it's going to be something that I'm not judging you, I'm here to help you, you're in a tough situation, and you got to be very careful of what words you use, the timing of when you say certain things. And a lot of times, it's very helpful that you may hear your provider not even saying anything. So we'll ask certain questions like, are you, like people come in with dizziness all the time, and we have to ask them certain things. So we'll ask them like, can you, so when you say dizzy, what do you mean by dizzy? And then there's a really good, if you want a really good neurologist to follow, Marty Samuels is out of Harvard. His YouTubes are hilarious. He's like a stand-up comedian. But he goes, so you ask them, what do you mean by dizzy? And then you just pause and don't say anything. And then someone asks, well, how long do you wait? He goes, till hell freezes over. Like, you just wait for the patient to give you that. Because exactly in family medicine, if you like low back pain, dizziness, weakness, and headaches, you'll be happy every day. Because people come in, and they're challenging to do, but all I'm saying is that if it's quiet, don't be upset about that. That's kind of part of the whole sort of evaluation of it. And then the other thing is you really do want to build rapport, so that you're really, in the old days it was like, the doctor's up here, the patient's down here, this sort of paternalism. It's really partnering. I'm like your health coach. I'm just, I kid with my patients all the time, like, look, my job is to keep you alive, make you live a long and happy life, because if you die, I get bad Yelp reviews. So think about me. Think how bad that would be for me if you die. So let's work together. And I kind of kid with them depending on where they're at. On the other is I'll kid with some patients, say like, it really, like, I sort of kid that I need to live because my sister, who does not like me, would pop a hamstring on my grave. So for my sister's sake, I'm going to try to eat well and move well. So you kind of kid with them so that you're partying with them, and that you want to be, like for me as a primary care, you're a life coach, we're going to kind of help them. So people kind of like the coaching. On the other hand, some people just want real direction. And then some people are specialists that are only going to see you one time, and then they're not going to come back because they're just going to do what they do and send you back to the primary care. So you'll get this in the different ones. Some people want people to come back. Some of the HMOs, they don't want them to come back because the less they see them, the more money they make. So there's all of those that you'll see. And then finally, I think it's going to take a while for you to really get down like what needs to be in the note and what doesn't. And so there is this book called the Success Code, and they say it takes like 10,000 hours or something to get good at it. So that's why doctors go so on. So your first, frankly, 100 charts are not going to be very good. But the whole thing is the more you do, that's why as much as you can, try to see as many patients as you can, get as many opinions as you can to try to get that down. The note's very important. We as physicians take the note very, very careful. So we go to all this to communicate, and then we might be in there and think of how many words are said in like 15 minutes. That's a lot to get on a page. It has to be organized right. The syntax can be right. So we do have dictaphones, but they don't, that's something you have to do outside, and that they don't put it in the computer at the right spot. So I think medical scribes are very important, and it's for that. Just having you there in the room can kind of help, because you can get all that down. You're not really allowed to do the interview, but I want you to know why they're doing the interview and the techniques they're using. And because this is not your end game, this is going on, you're going to be way ahead when you do go to professional school, because this is, frankly, 90% of what they teach you, especially in the first couple years for clinical skills. And then finally, when we go on, what I like to do is, if you go to page 13 on the top right, I think you guys should prepare for the patient you're going to see. So if you're going to see like a patient with a heart attack, go look up Wikipedia on heart attacks and just know the basics of what they're going to do. What we're going to try to do is get some YouTubes that you can quickly look for 2 minutes. Let me tell you the nuts and bolts of that. So that's another project. If you guys don't have enough project to do. So we'll kind of get up to speed here. So the sequence, I think, is you should prepare to care, what I call it. So before you go see, they're going to go see someone, take, you can, 30 seconds at least, okay, heart attack. Kind of what do I need to know, what do I think? Because you want to anticipate what they're going to be asking. And I think if you could do that, and then when you go to the patient, then they'll go through the sequence of events that they do, and you also want to put all this in a cultural context. So I like the idea of kind of getting to know the patient before I go in as much as I can. So when I go in, I'm kind of that far ahead. So you review the last note. So if you're in an office, review the last note. What was the plan? Did they do that? They're sent for an x-ray. Did they get the x-ray? They're sent for a lab. Did they get the lab? Just any of those things. If they did see a specialist, do we have that note? So you may be asked to get ready for setting them up. And then when you go in, well, I like to huddle with my scribe and say, okay, here's probably what we're going to do. And it turns out I'm over 80% correct on what we're going to do even before I see the patient. And it's just because I see 10,000 patients a year. I've been doing this for 30 years. I don't know how many that is. That's a lot of people. And so I'm not saying I'm right all the time, but I have kind of a good idea kind of what they're going to do, and we kind of can roll with that. And then the big thing is you do have to adjust to the behavior. I have timers on my wall, so we hate to wait. It's like we just hate to wait. And so I try to see my patients before their appointment because then they're happy with me. If I'm before or just on time, I can be average and get good reviews. If I'm a half hour, 45 minutes late, I don't care how good I am, I'm going to get a bad review. So I like to know how long they've been in the room. So I have 2 timers. I put how long I've been in the room, and then I put a timer when I go in. So if I'm stuck in a room because someone is just continuing to talk, I may need help to get extracted from the room, otherwise they'll be there forever. And then the whole thing for me is I kind of want to know what we're going to do. Like, we're probably going to do this and this and this, so the MA can kind of get ready to know we're going to probably do an injection, we're probably going to do a freeze-off award, we may need to do an EKG, that kind of stuff. So I get them ready to go. And then in the interview, we greet, we establish the agenda of the visit, like kind of what we're going to do, and then I invite the patient to tell a story. Now, in my thing, because I have MA scribes, medical assistant scribes, or I have pre-meds, which you guys can go in, I like to know them to take the history first, and I give the patient their history. So this kind of breaks all the rules, but I find it works very well. Patients don't care how much I know until they know how much I care. So if I can give you your history to your satisfaction, and I always compliment you, you're younger than stated age, you're engaging and well-dressed, and that kind of stuff. They just kind of like that. If I know little tidbits about them, they're like, wow, he knows me, he knows what I can do, and I find that very powerful. So that's what we're sort of doing research on. And then I like to see, I like to ask, I have my MA scribe, what does the patient think they have? Because I want to know what they think. And it's always, do they have cancer? Do they have some infection, something bad? Because they just think the worst. And then sort of getting the emotional cues, like if I say, how are you? And they start crying, I'm not in for a long, and that's it. And then the other is, like, if I have to give them bad news, like I'll have a soccer player come in, she's a lead soccer player, got taken out, and I just know that she has an ACL out. And then and she doesn't know that, and I just have to just get ready, because as soon as I say it, like, that's her career, maybe she's a Division I soccer player, all of those things. So you just have to understand when you're going to do it. And really, the tough thing is how do you give bad news to people. And then I like to do, like this middle one, is share the treatment plan. Okay, here's what I think we should do. What I'm really lucky is I have a big screen like this, but a big screen in my room, and I just show them YouTubes, and I have PowerPoints, and I just say, okay, here's you, and here's normal. Look how bad you are, and look at normal. And so they don't have to believe me, they can, they believe a screen versus me. I can show them like your guys' websites, like on the sleep, like here, look at Logan's sleep study. Here's my TEDx talk on that, and I can give them validation. I show them all these books. I'll show them just a lot of stuff to get them, okay, does that sound reasonable? And then I'll close and then kind of go through it, and then a lot of times after the visit, and this is where you can like post-huddle, we call it post-mortem, with your provider, like, okay, where did you do good, how did I do bad, that kind of stuff. And your providers really like that if you ask them, okay, what can I get better at? Because that's what you want to know. And then the cultural context, like, let's play roles. I'll be the elephant in the room, and you address me. It's kind of a bad thing, but just kind of understand where you're at and what you want to do. I like the idea that it's really a partnership of healing, we're all in it together. And then one thing that, let's say you're in Temecula and you're walking down the street, and behind you, you hear hoofbeats, right? What kind of animal do you think that is? It's by a horse. Now, could it be a zebra? Could a zebra have got out of the circus and be behind you? Sure, but that's pretty rare. So this is a phrase you'll hear a lot. When you hear hoofbeats, think of horses, not zebras. So common things happen commonly. But I think for you guys, think of the rare things, think of the worst thing it could be. So you'll hear these phrases, and this is how your providers will love you when you know these kind of phrases. Like, what's the zebra here? They'll know right away. It's pretty funny. And so just understand, we as physicians are always thinking like, what most likely it is, and what could it be that would be life-threatening. And so it's going to be one of those plays. So I think you're going to like being a scribe because you'll be privy to some very interesting conversations. That being said, you have a job to focus to get the chart notes done. And so next week, we're going to be going over the actual templates. This is where you actually get to use your computers. Expander code. So if I just write .ttp, that means tender tube palpation, limited range of motion, neurovascular attack. So these are what makes the EHR much better than just the old hand free texting into it. So, but that being said, you have to be careful that when you put in like a template, which kind of has a lot of automatic stuff, that it's totally correct, because they do not like it when you cut and paste. So we will talk about some of those things next time. So you said next week then is when we'll get the go-ahead to probably.
Yeah, we don't have a Scribe class next Thursday, but next week is probably when we're going to start handing out the logins.
So you'll be emailing?
Yeah, I'll be in contact.
So in general, the next, so I just kind of did overviews,